Into the 6-minute territory. He bid 6 minutes and 12 seconds. He absolutely was determined to play with the black pieces here, and that gives him draw odds.
Wow, that is a statement that shows confidence. He just won a game with the white pieces on demand, not backing himself to do it again, being so insistent that he takes black, backing himself to hold the draw, but taking only 60% of his opponent's time. Wow, will he regret that, Tanya?
6-12. That is insane. That is nuts. That's absolutely desperate to get the black pieces. We've spoken about this, you know, here at the EWC, anything below 7. How low can you go? Anything below that mark should not be legal. If anyone can do it, it's got to be the speed monsters. It's got to be the speed demons, right? Hikaru Nakamura is one of the players who can pull it off. Needs only a draw to book his spot into the finals. But will it be too less of a time to make that happen?
You have to imagine that if any players can do it, it'll be one of the Team Falcons players who are the fastest with the mouse here, arguably. So here we go. This is the Armageddon game. King's Indian defense being deployed.
King's Indian Part 2 after Hikaru won earlier with the black pieces in this opening. And we see the bayonet attack here from Magnus Carlsen, one of the most trendy variations in this opening. Blocked center, white playing on the queen side, black most likely later playing on the king side. Anyone's game, but quick moves from Hikaru. He's only spent a few seconds up to this point.
And after this sudden death Armageddon, a key will be crushed. Will it be Team Liquid's or will it be Hikaru's key right now? There is so much that rides on this final Armageddon of the day, and Hikaru does what King's Indian defense requires. He's got the pawn storm going on that right flank towards Magnus's king. This is game on. It starts looking scary, this position. F4, G5, 8-6, all of that coming up the board.
Yeah, the black pawn storm, as we call it, the King's Indian trademark. Hikaru looks locked in, looks super focused, and Magnus is the first to go into the tank. He's burned over a minute of his time. He asked for this opening. Very brave from Magnus this time to go into an opening he's already lost in this match. But there we go. The White Knight jumping forward is another typical motif in this opening.
Also typical of Carlsen. You lost in this opening. That's fine. I want another go. I want another bite at the cherry. I want to make things right. He's not afraid of that challenge.
He's not afraid, and it looks like if you go by the evaluation bar, it's a great opening decision by him what he's gone. But usually in the King's Indian defense, the evaluation bar does not tell the full story. It very often gives an advantage to white, but the position is so complex, so dynamic, where black's going for the attack, white aiming for that E6 square, ideas on the queen's side. David, how often have we seen the evaluation bar be completely wrong from a human perspective in this opening?
Exactly. It's deceptive. We'll ignore the eval bar for the next few moves unless it swings massively in either direction. This is the one opening that computers, that AI and others were still struggling to understand up until recently, always giving white an advantage due to the extra space, the D5 pawn as the spearhead. But Magnus forced back with his knight, forced into the retreat. Hikaru now stepping back with his rook. It's the clock times that tell a lot about this story. It is Hikaru's style. He's an attacker by heart, by nature. Magnus doesn't like defending these positions. And
he's coming in with those pawns next, right? 8-6 was only setting up F4 and G5. Magnus denies that. He goes for the trade of those pawns. Pawn takes pawn on the board, recaptured by the knight. But this does leave a beautiful E4 post for Magnus's knight to jump into.
Remember as well, Hikaru started with 6 minutes and 12 seconds. Magnus Carlsen with 10 minutes. So Hikaru has used less than half the time that Magnus has, but he has to keep this up for the entire game.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. I was shocked actually that Hikaru took on F5 with his knight. They do say that every schoolboy knows you should take back on F5 with your pawn to establish a beautiful pawn center. Much more fluid, much more mobile there. And especially against Team Liquid, you want that fluid pawn structure. And here, look at this. The White Knight installed brilliantly in the middle of the board. Magnus, I think this is a huge step in the right direction for him. The last few moves, he's going to be very happy with.
Complete control of the light squares in the middle of the board. He lines up the queen, a battery there. Bishop takes knight. Now another piece replaces that central square. Hikaru, meanwhile, sets up a battery on the F line. The queen and the rook lined up. Ideas of the knight jumping to H4 to trying to deflect that defender on F3.
Magnus covers the central D4 outpost. Still a very cagey position. Hikaru steps forward. He's playing this like a must-win game, Hikaru. Even though a draw is sufficient, that's a great attitude. He wants to be aggressive, as he was talking about earlier in the day. The White Knight felt it was redundant on that F3 square. It's relocating, going to jump forward to hit the Black Queen. Still very cagey stuff. Magnus still with a 3-minute time advantage, though. And a bit of a mistake from Hikaru. The Black Rook sliding to the wrong side of the board. Knight G4 in the air.
Okay. And it comes in, it hits the queen. There are big ideas. The queen needs to stay connected to that Black Knight. It moves back to F8.
Wow, apparently there's a brilliant tactic that gives Magnus a huge advantage in this position. It's difficult, it's hidden, it's unlikely to appear. I'm going to say for a human in a situation like this, tough. But bishop takes pawn on E5, bang, blowing open the center.
Wow.
And after a recapture, the White Rook is going to slide across, pinning the Black Knight, just like Hikaru pinned his knight in the previous game. White is going to win back the material that he just sacrificed with interest. Is Magnus going to find this? That is the key. This would be the continuation of the variation that he would need to see at the very end, with a knight fork, winning the Black Queen, emerging with a couple of extra pawns. Magnus misses it. Queen to D3 instead. Missed opportunity by the world number one, Hikaru, probably breathing a sigh of relief.
That was a long line to calculate, and especially that maneuver at the end by the knight winning the queen. You know, someone taps Magnus on the shoulder, tells him there's something in the position, he finds it. But to realize that this is the critical moment, that something exists, is the hardest part about chess. Instead, Magnus going the wrong way, another inaccuracy on the board.
It's something so difficult to see in the moment as well. And here we go. We have a little bit of liquidation on the queen side of the board. The rooks have been swapped off on the A file. There is no longer a pawn there. And now we've got White potentially taking the pawn on B6 at the end of that sequence.
Yeah, Magnus can swoop now. The White Rook is poised, as we see Hikaru actually pre-moving, expecting Magnus to take the knight in the center of the board instead. But why is he hesitating? There we go. Magnus Carlsen takes. Be careful. There are some forks in the air. Black is threatening to play rook takes bishop, followed by a nasty knight fork. That would be a winning tactic. Magnus needs to get out of that. He needs to sidestep with his king or defend the E2 square with his rook. Anything else, Hikaru might take this game.
And the time situation is beginning to get better and better for Hikaru Nakamura. He's down to 4 minutes flat. Magnus Carlsen, though, 5:45. Yes, he's still ahead, but that difference between those two times, which started at nearly 4 minutes, is now closer to 1.
But Magnus needs to be super careful. He could be lost in one move. He needs to find a good way to stop this trap that has been set up. He moves his king, sidesteps any forks, and there we have Hikaru Nakamura with his decision, stepping in with the rook to the second rank, now threatening a checkmate in one. Queen takes pawn. Fight is on. Magnus on the defense.
Checkmate threatened. Magnus needs to defend against this, needs to hold the gate. He retreats his knight. Not a happy move. The knight misplaced on the first rank, but out of necessity there. Long-term, Magnus is doing very well. Strategically, Magnus has the advantage. If he can get the queens off, he's loving life. Hikaru, though, going on the attack yet again, creating threats. And wow, Hikaru's trapped his own rook. The white queen retreating. That black rook has no escape squares.
He missed it. He completely missed the shot. And Magnus on top of things. He knows it. Queen takes rook. You've got nowhere to hide. If you put that on E2, bishop takes knight. Get rid of the defender. You have no time to capture the knight on D1, Hikaru Nakamura. What a miss. Rook B8 coming in as well. It's not only attacking the queen, but about to win Hikaru's queen, and Hikaru panicking there.
It's all gone wrong for Hikaru Nakamura in the space of one move. It was a very attacking position, a very promising position, one he would have enjoyed. But this double attack, very sneaky there from Magnus Carlsen, has just one material. Now the black rook drops off, exchange up, rook for knight.
But he will fight on. With the queen, knight, and bishop around the white king, Magnus has to go on the attack. Otherwise, Hikaru's queen's about to come in on H2, threatening some big checks.
And you can see the mentality from Hikaru, that champion's mentality. He slumped in his chair when he realized that was a big mistake, and he got back up within a fraction of a second, and he was instantly calculating, what can I do next? How can I still make something out of this game?
This is still so complicated. Magnus has a very narrow path here to victory. His bishop is attacked. The black queen is super active. He needs to slide back. Great defensive move there, hitting the black bishop, defending the white bishop, and setting up some checks. The white bishop hoping to slide into h7, forcing Hikaru back with his bishop. We saw Hikaru almost banging the table there. Look at the eval bar. Magnus is winning, white is winning, but can he put the finishing touches on? It's 4.5 minutes against under 3 minutes now. Still anything possible.
Exchange up, simplification here, favoring the player who's currently ahead, Hikaru, getting more and more frustrated as he sits because he has fewer pieces with which to create the complications that he so desperately wants and needs in this game.
But Magnus Carlsen is the one who is playing for the win here. He goes in with a check. And now look at that beautiful move. Retreats the bishop. Once the king is disconnected from the bishop, he disconnects the queen from that dark squared bishop. Rook takes bishop is the big threat. Hikaru Nakamura, is he giving up?
Hikaru looks devastated. He's going to slide his king across to defend the bishop. The white rook is perfectly placed. The white bishop perfectly placed. All Magnus needs to do is bring in his queen. But Hikaru looks so frustrated, giving up hope. Where is the finishing blow? Magnus looking for it with 4 minutes left. Hits the black queen. He's going to kick her away. And now he's going to give a check with his bishop. The black king has nowhere to go. The white queen poised to swoop in. And that might just spell the end. Hikaru gets ready to resign. Checkmate incoming. It's going to end here and now.
GG, Magnus Carlsen in an incredibly thrilling Armageddon game pounces on the mistake immediately after.